Folks, normally you see the opening credits at this point, but after recording our show on Saturday, and so this is probably midweek-ish that you're seeing it, a couple details came through that we wanted to add to the top of the show. First, you're going to have to watch the show to know what I'm talking about in terms of the information, but with respect to Joe Germinerio and some questions that we have from Twitter on the Brockport quarterback switch, the rumors that we discuss have been confirmed. We're not going to get into how and why and all that stuff. We've been asked not to go there. But the fact is that when we talk about rumors, everything that we state has been confirmed later on in the show. JB, we also learned some very sad news with respect to a former ITH guest we had on probably about, I want to say about 6 years ago or so, give or take.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah, unfortunately, we found out through her sister Amy that Beth Franks, the mother of Andrew, who was the kicker for RPI and also the for the Miami Dolphins for a couple seasons, has unfortunately passed away from breast cancer. So I think this is something we wanted to dedicate this show in her memory. We did have her on once to talk to Mom about what it's like to have a son playing Division III football and his path to the NFL. We haven't talked to Andrew in a while, but our heart goes out to the Franks family and the extended RPI and other families that knew her from the conversations and interactions we've had with her over the years. Just a sweet woman, great mom, and I'm sure a lovely person. So she will be missed, and we dedicate this in her memory.
Andrew, hang in there with your family, and hopefully someday later on we can talk to you folks. And folks, as you know, we are big promoters of Andrew and trying to get him to another pro football team. Hopefully that does happen in the future. But first, they've got a lot, obviously, to consider with what's happened in their family. Our condolences. And welcome to In the Huddle's April special. We did one, what was it, February-ish.
Yep.
And
on my birthday.
Yeah, it was. And
Thanks.
we had a lot of good response during that show, so we want to come back and do another off-season show here. In case you're wondering, in case you can't read below us probably, if I do my editing right, I'm Frank Rossi, that's James Baker. We're still calling this Season 11 at this point. We'll go to Season 12 probably either on our next show or the one after that.
Right.
But we wanted to update you on a lot of things that have been developing, not just in the East region, but beyond. We have some guests to get to here, or at least two guests, and you'll learn as we do here whether we'll have a third one or not. But a lot of news covered here. And first off, JB, how excited are you for the next season to begin?
I'm really excited. I think we had a great second year as far as this Facebook Live in the Huddle format, and I think it can only go up, right? Well, maybe not. We'll see. We got mixed reviews, I think, from certain programs, but overall the feedback has been very positive. Our at D3FB Huddle Twitter handle keeps growing, and so we're having some fun with it. And there's been some developments that we felt warranted some reporting on. So here we are.
Here we are,
indeed,
in New York City. Yes, that we should disclose that last time I was in JB's kitchen. This time he's in my living room.
Yeah, the kitchen's over there. It's kind of the same.
Yeah, your kitchen's nicer than mine, I got to say. So that's why we're out here with a little bit of sun behind us here. It's a beautiful day in New York City, so we're going to keep this kind of short, folks, to the degree we can.
Yeah, I have a reunion to go to for my wife.
At Columbia,
yeah. So we got to get up there.
And I'm just going to put a random prop up for no apparent reason. Actually, I've got your Heart for Whalers hat that you left here last time you were visiting.
It's a gift.
It was a gift?
Yeah, exactly.
There we go. Okay, I'll keep wearing it then.
Yeah.
You're not going to be able to see my face because of this lighting, but it'll be okay. I think that's an improvement according to most folks out there. So, hey, we got some headlines. Reading off our script here, we should start right off. And one of the things that has developed, you may have heard my voice about it a little bit on the Around the Nation podcast a couple of months ago, is the possibility of realignment of the divisions for all sports in Division III. Not just football, but that one would be affected in a large way. Yeah. Most likely would go to a 6-region structure versus the current 4. Yeah. This could force the creation of a New England-only type of region, and then put the teams like in the Liberty League and the Empire 8 into perhaps the OAC.
Or the Eric Wren New York Super Conference.
True.
With all the teams from the Empire 8 and Liberty League in one.
With some New Jersey representation as well. What it would do is basically make smaller regions. You probably wouldn't have 10 ranked teams in each region, though, either.
Right.
You've heard me kind of say some things against this idea, JB, that if it's done without any other changes, such as maybe increasing the access ratio, where you could have a 7-team conference get an automatic bid, maybe make that 8 or 9 teams and reclaim some bids that way, or earned access, which Division II does, where you're not guaranteed as a conference every year an automatic bid. If they can do something to reclaim some bids to be hand out as a Pool C type system, I might be for this. But if you're going to go to a 6-region structure with only 5 automatic bid or 5 non-automatic bids, essentially at large bids, that's where my trouble comes with this, because you're really creating a scenario where the best teams in the country get left out. Some may just get left out because there's not enough at-large bids to go around, and that concerns me a little bit. What's your thinking?
Well, I think access has always been sort of the core of the Division III, at least from a football perspective, playoff structure. So, in theory, having a more condensed regional structure might help that, but I could also see it backfire. I know some of the Midwestern fans would probably say, get these New England teams and these other conferences out of here. They're not as good as us, and so we deserve more access, that type of thing. So we've heard those comments for years now, and I would assume that any new structure that's not going anywhere. So, but I think at the core of it, it is supposed to be about access, and what we've seen the last couple of years with the committee, they have really kind of returned back to that more regionalized structure as far as trying to keep costs down, the travel and all that kind of considerations. Although, ironically, this fall, we're going to see some really crazy road trips for some of these teams because of some of the ways the schedules have gotten blown up because of teams leaving conferences and needing to play games.
That's issue number 2, or headline number 2 we want to talk about. Odd scheduling going on. Since our last recording, messed up my hair with that hat, I just noticed. Yours is looking pretty interesting. Yeah, you might want this hat back. There you go. Columbia on the D3 show here. We have odd scheduling that's been announced since, such as, and you can see my notes right here. I want to make sure we get these. Western New England and Louisiana College and North Carolina Wesleyan all playing Stetson in the FCS.
There we go.
And Stetson was not exactly a pushover team last season.
8-2 in the Pioneer League, so they're a solid program. And it's interesting. I know their head coach came down from Princeton, I think, and so obviously some East Coast ties there. But I mean, that's a pretty long haul from Springfield and from other parts of the country to come down and play what's a pretty strong, Division I AA caliber team. So, I mean, I give credit for Western New England for going for it. I'm going to try to make it to that game, and maybe even some of the other ones, depending on the scheduling. DeLand, where Stetson is about 40 minutes, half an hour or so northeast of where I live in Orlando. So maybe you'll see me on the sidelines when tweeting, doing what I do. But yeah. Very interesting scheduling, but they're not the only ones in D3 who are going to be playing some upper division schools.
I was going to say we could have you bring out your inner Frank Rossi on the sidelines.
I just need a sparkly jacket.
Yeah, I'll loan you one before you leave. I don't think I'm your size, but that's a whole other story. Catholic versus Georgetown, which is a restart of something that was years ago, a DC rivalry that got dropped eventually, and now it is back on the schedule at this point. Also, Wesley versus Franklin Pierce to open the season. That's a D2 school.
New Hampshire. Yeah.
And Rowan will host Linfield. Now, that is most likely a development because of the NJAC kind of getting busted up with the leaving of Southern Virginia
and
Frostburg State. So that obviously adds a couple of games that you have to fill suddenly on the NJAC schedule. We remember that Rowan is going to be facing Hobart.
Yep. Week 3.
Near and dear to your heart. And so here's another game for them. Linfield coming across, and I'm going to assume that Rowan would have to go to Linfield next year. I can't see Linfield doing this without the reciprocity on that. And George Fox, a Northwest Conference school.
Yeah, I think they're in Oregon or Washington State.
At Alfred. Interesting.
Yeah.
I didn't see that one coming.
No, and there isn't really a direct flight to Alfred. So
it's not direct much of anything to Alfred.
No, that is going to be a hop, a skip, and a jump all the way to get to Mayberry, as some of the Alfred fans like to call it. But beautiful stadium there in Alfred, and it should be a great matchup. George Fox has flirted with the top 25 a few times. Mostly because of matchups with Linfield, so it's great. We don't really get to see these West versus East type of matchups hardly ever, unless it's a kind of a random playoff situation. So it'll be good to see how they match up.
Planes, trains, automobiles, none of which are direct to Alfred. It's, I think, what we've learned over the years.
Yes.
But I always enjoy going out there. So, folks, relax. Yep. We do love Alfred. And
ceramic engineering is very dear to our hearts.
I'm sure it is. Didn't see that one coming here, folks. That was James Baker saying that. Okay, James Baker, that guy. Let's talk more about some headlines since we last talked to you in February-ish. And that is the 2 legal cases that we've been covering for the last year plus are concluded. First, let's talk about Benjamin Petway being the only of the Wheaton 5, the original Wheaton 5 that were out there from the hazing situation that the Wheaton football team was facing. He was the only one left, but he was pushing himself toward trial, maybe to sort of last out there to get a better deal. Chicago Tribune had an article actually after the state cut a deal with him finally in the month of March. I guess the terminology was that he was the least culpable of the 5. That was the understanding of the prosecutor, and so he got cut the best deal ultimately, and that may have made it worth holding out for a little bit longer. But he did have to still plead guilty to something in the misdemeanor category. But for Wheaton, this is a relief to have this phase of life over for that program. It's a school that prides itself as trying to be a very religious, holy type approach, and this sort of just rubbed against that, I guess is the right way to say it. And this is over with. You don't define a school by 1 or 2 or even just 5 individuals, right. But at the same time, the perceptions do form based on incidents like this, and you want this to go away, obviously.
Yes.
The other update is D'Angelo Fulford's case in Broward County, Florida, was marked ready for trial at one point in early March.
After about 8 continuances, but yes.
Yep, and depositions, I believe, had happened somewhere in those continuances and whatnot. And out of nowhere, we thought maybe a deal was being cut for a misdemeanor type thing like Petway and the Wheaton 5 all had done, but they abandoned the case a week later, and we have reached out to the Broward County State Attorney's Office to find out why. What changed? Did a witness story change along the way? Did something happen in depositions that we don't understand or know about? It's rare, and I'm an attorney, I'll say this, it is rare for the state to completely abandon a case at that phase. Usually it's just a deal being cut, a better deal like you saw in the Wheaton situation. JB, things change so quickly as we were preparing again to get this out. Another change occurred. You saw at the top of the show where we talked about some changes. You're back in Florida now, but yeah, exactly. But we're going to cut our discussion about Fulford here, replace it with this info that we received. The state attorney, I inquired about why the charges were abandoned on D'Angelo Fulford down in Broward County, and we got a document back, and they call this, for those wondering, officially the closing memorandum or nolle prosequi memorandum. And That means essentially you're explaining why charges were abandoned in this case. And we'll put up on the screen some quotes here, but in short, in 2017, December 2017, when this was first learned about publicly, the state apparently tried to reach the victim's father, the victim being the person that was allegedly hazed in 2015. They couldn't get connected with them in December of 2017, but then suddenly, December 28th, 2017, the victim's father called the state attorney and said, please don't bring charges. Essentially, I'll get you some quote here. The defendant, Fulford, made a stupid decision when he was a child, and he did not want to see the defendant serve time on this case and have his life ruined. He also stated that there was no restitution owed to the victim in this case because there was a separate civil suit with the school board which covered all of the expenses. In the state of Florida, you can sue Broward County for up to $15,000 unless the school board relents to allow for a bigger lawsuit. We doubt that happened, but generally the limit is $15,000. We have not located a lawsuit on the civil side that would represent that case. But we go further, and on March 8th, 2019, the undersigned assistant state attorney, as quoting this, made contact with the victim, the victim's father, and the victim's mother. All of the parties expressed their wishes that the charges against the defendant should be dismissed. They further stated that it was something, quote, stupid that occurred in school and was a mistake. The victim's father further stated that they would even testify in trial in favor of the defendant, so in favor of Fulford, and that they were only interested in getting compensated through the civil suit. So eventually they made the determination, obviously, that there wasn't sufficient case, especially if that was going to happen, and dropped the charges, abandoned the case at that point in time. Now, it leaves some open questions, obviously, such as if on December 28th, 2017, a victim's father tells you, yeah, we don't want to see the charges pressed and we may not cooperate, why did it take 15 months for the state of Florida to abandon this case unless they felt something odd was happening here, perhaps a payout, something? We don't know. But obviously they had some independent basis from video evidence that was discussed in this memo that suggested something may have happened, a little unsavory to the point of a felony, obviously. But when it came down to it, they would not have had the cooperation of the much-needed primary witness, and so in March of 2019, charges were dropped. What's your thought?
I think it kind of tells a story that we sort of thought that something happened, and that it was probably just kids being kids, maybe not ill intent necessarily, but sort of an accident happened, and at the end of the day, the case is over. So hopefully this is something that the Mount Union and other folks in Alliance, I know they've kind of already tried to put it behind them. It's been behind them for a while now. It's just kind of a shame, though, that it seems like this could have ended and could have been over with well before this. And so, for D'Angelo, who's basically been kind of exonerated here, it would have been nice for him a year or so ago if that's what would happen. But obviously the state saw, maybe it was something to make a name for themselves, maybe point out, some of the hazing characteristics of Miramar High School and sort of that football culture, as we sometimes hear in the press, which is not always the, going along with the a positive image, but the state hung on to it for probably a little bit too long, I think, and it's unfortunate in a way for almost all the parties involved. But at least at the end of the day, it seems like the family feels like they've been taken care of by the county, and that's the end of that.
Yeah, and we'll run a little bit more here, obviously, about the Wheaton case as well coming up in a couple, or we may have actually already talked about it, but the point I'm going to be making here is that there's no congratulations to be had here, ultimately, that these are wrapped up, and it's good for the schools, ultimately, that they're wrapped up. But everybody needs to move on with their lives, go play football at this point. What's done is done. Nobody's facing any jail time. In the Wheaton case, it was basically community service, etc., and some fines, though not huge fines from what I can tell. In the case of Fulford, it looks like the school board at least had to pay some money. If anybody else did, we don't know, because it may not have been done in a lawsuit. That will probably never be known, to be honest. So we can move on from this case and the case of Wheaton at this point, and we will talk, a lot more about football over the next shows. Now, back to our regularly scheduled segment. Speaking about football, we saw a coach change since last we spoke, and that is Vincent DiGaetano leaving Maritime. He was technically a temporary or interim head coach, I guess is the wording we always use, last year. Had a good season. I think it was at 7-3 in the regular season, and then a loss in the New England Bowl against Springfield. 7-4 overall, but he did well to keep alive the Clayton Kendrick Holmes legacy of things. And remember, he and Kendrick Holmes were basically two of the guys that were instrumental in starting up Maritime.
Getting that program up to the level they are,
Exactly. Well, he is now going to be an assistant at Fordham after things shook out at Maritime, and seems really, really happy and upbeat. I talked to him. He was nothing but positive and optimistic about his future, and also about what happens next for Maritime. Mickey Raring from Johns Hopkins is now the head coach. He was the defensive coordinator at Hopkins. We'll talk a little bit more about the shakeout at Hopkins and why it may have happened in a second here. But Mickey Raring, now in the Huddle country, as we say, here in the East region, he's taken on the Maritime. He's taken on the Maritime job. We'll talk to him hopefully in an upcoming show. But what do you think about how things shook out at Maritime?
It was a little bit of a surprise, I guess, on some levels, because of the job that Coach did, especially with the legacy with Kendrick Holmes there. But I think, and we'll get into some predictions and stuff in a little bit. But with Husson departing for the CCC, the ECFC automatic qualifier is up for grabs, and I think that this was probably a move by the athletic director to try to get that bid somehow, and apparently felt that coach from Hopkins, who was literally a few plays away from going to the national championship game, is the way to do it. And so we wish all these guys well, and we'll certainly keep an eye on SUNY Maritime. I would think, based on their track record, that they are probably the favorite in the ECFC at the moment. Although I am aware of some commits to places like Dean and other schools that are pretty big time, that could change the face of that conference, but we'll see. So
it's going to be interesting. 2019 already lining up that way here, and with the changes we already knew about in the NJAC, in the ECFC, in the CCC as a result of Husson moving over to there. I'm excited to see what happens. We've got some more changes to talk about in a little bit, but let's go outside the East region for a moment here, but with a team that the committee sort of put in the East region, at least during the playoffs, and that is concerning Johns Hopkins. We detailed Coach Margraff's death in our last show. On January 2nd was his passing. We sort of wanted to give everybody some time to breathe over there before we pursued any interviews, and we actually reached out to David Tammaro's father, quarterback at Johns Hopkins, to say, hey, what is the mentality over there right now? Is it a good time maybe to talk to David, for instance? And he said, yeah, I think so, because they're all sort of trying to turn the page to the next season. So we reached out to Ernie and company out at Johns Hopkins and put this together. Had a great interview with David coming up here. So why don't we go to it? Here comes our interview with David Tammaro earlier. And for the first time ever, a two-box for us, or, we're doing an interview with just one other box here, JB, because you are with me here in New York City, and we are really excited to have David Tammaro, and if folks remember, it's Tammaro, not tomorrow, here with us here in the Huddle. Dave, thanks for joining us. Last time I saw you, it was in Baltimore, and you guys had just beaten RPI, and we're headed to the national semifinals. Had an incredible performance against Mount Union the following week. Kind of take us through what your feelings were last season. What was it, the Susquehanna game you guys had lost? And how you guys got it back together. What was it that got the Blue Jays back on track to have their best season in history?
Yeah, well, thank you guys for having me on the show, first and foremost. Second, yeah, I think, Susquehanna, that was a tough game. It's the second game of the year, so it's kind of crazy to have a loss and be 0-1 in the Centennial Conference. I don't know if that's happened in 30 years for Hopkins football, but I think after that point, really no one in the country, except for the guys in the locker room with me, believed that we could do what we did, win the conference championship, make a deep playoff run. But I think it came down to, just going week by week. I think we kind of started off the season, we were looking past the first couple of games. We were looking at, big games like Muhlenberg, F&M. But I think, when we lost that game, it kind of put everything into perspective. And, it really turned every game into a playoff game because we knew if we lose another one, we're not making the playoffs. So we really went week by week. And I'll credit the seniors. There was great senior leadership. After that game, it was tough, but they kind of collected everyone. They said, guys, this isn't the end of our year. We know that. We just got to go week by week, practice by practice, give everything you got every single day, and we can get where we want to be. So,
David, you mentioned a little bit about the Centennial Conference, and we've been watching you guys for a few years now, and it really seemed like not only was it a historic season for Hopkins, but your conference mates like Muhlenberg and others really had some of their best seasons ever too. Can you talk a little bit about the competition within the Centennial? It seemed like it just elevated the playing field for almost everybody, including you guys.
Yeah, it's been great. I think ever since my freshman year, every year the Centennial Conference has gotten better, gotten more competitive. I think it's one of the best conferences in all of college football in terms of, great competition, great academics. There's a ton of great schools. And I think playing in Centennial Conference really helps, when you get out of the Centennial Conference and you go to the playoffs. You saw Muhlenberg made a deep run. We made a deep run. So I think it really helps every week playing a good team. So that when you get into the playoffs, it's not like you're surprised and you have to play good teams like Frostburg, RPI, Mount Union. So it really helps, I think.
Yeah, speaking of the Raiders, what was that like for you as a player? I mean, for many years, decades now, I mean, Mount Union's really been kind of the standard for Division III football. You guys went toe-to-toe with them for pretty much the entire game, only lost really by a touchdown, could have gone either way. Tell me a little bit about like what your experience was to go out to Alliance and to play one of the premier programs of Division III.
Yeah, no, it was a cool experience. Like you said, every year they're in the semifinals or finals or winning the thing. So it was great to get out there and play. But I think as a team, we really showed that we're on the same caliber as Mount Union. Like you said, we lost by a touchdown. I think the game could have gone either way. I think if we played them 10 times, it might have been a split 5-5. So. It was really cool to get out there and play them. They got some great athletes. They got great history, great coaches. But, I think now Hopkins has been elevated to that level. So hopefully we'll get to meet them and get playoffs.
Speaking of great coaches, we'd be remiss if we didn't mention your late head coach, Jim Margraf, passing away right after the new year. We were kind of the news bearers internally in the organizations between D3Football.com and in the Huddle. We had a note that day, and JB and I were just absolutely mesmerized by the idea that this could even be true. And, we did everything we could to research it before we went public with it. When did you hear? What was your reaction? And what is your feeling right now after digesting it for as long as you've been able to now, probably about 3 months later? Kind of take us through, the mind of a youth going through something like this that I'm going to guess you never really had to encounter before, at least as a football player.
Yeah, it was really tough. It was January 2nd. I was at home. I was at the gym, actually. And we got a text from, the Hopkins football number that said, everyone check their emails right now, it's urgent. And that's kind of how the news broke. Read the email, and immediately I was floored, like you said. I mean, I started bawling. I had to leave. It was tough, very tough. But then towards the end of January, our whole team came back, and we got see coach's service, and we had our team banquet, and got to talk with his family, and just hearing how everyone talked so highly of him I think it really helped me. I kind of understood. This man was such a special man, and he touched the lives of so many. There was, I think, like over 1,300, 1,400 people at his service, and it was broadcasted online. There was thousands of other people watching online. So just kind of shows you what type of person he was and how many people were, touched by him. Now, then we named a new head coach, Coach Camara, which I think was the man for the job. All he knows is Hopkins football. He played under Coach Margraf. He worked under him for 10 years, and I think he's been doing an amazing job, really just for the situation that happened and the hand he was dealt. He's been doing an amazing job. And just the other hires we made, we hired Coach Josephson on the offensive side of the ball, who also worked and played under Coach Margraf. It was sad we lost Coach Rearing, but I'm really happy for him. He got a head coaching job up in New York, so it's great for him. And we hired a new defense coordinator, Coach Green, he's just the man. He knows so much about football. He's a great guy. And then our other coaches too are in a bigger role now. Coach Sternfeld, coaching offensive line, and Coach P, coaching linebackers. So I'm really happy for those guys getting a bigger role. And we also got Coach Wadika, who again played under Coach Margraf. So I'm really happy with the staff, and I think this spring's just been awesome. The level of competition's almost been raised. It's been a lot of fun. We got a new defense that I get to go against every day in practice, which is a lot of fun for me. I'm learning a ton of things too. So I think the team as a whole now, I think everyone's kind of really grasping the change, and we've been going really well in spring. So I'm excited to see where it heads.
Before JB gets his next question, and I will bring up that Mickey Rearing has gone to an In the Huddle school now because he's in the East region. So maybe that was an inducement for him to go to Maritime as a head coach, and we'll have him on closer to the start of the season to talk about his transition over there. JB?
Maybe to lighten things up a little bit, we've had some other quarterbacks on the show who apparently have the ability to out-eat their offensive lines when they go out to, sometimes as a quarterback you got to take your linemen out, right? Got to get them some pizza. You got to get them some dinner. How are you able to hang in there with the Hopkins line, or are they they take you to the cleaners when you have to take them out for lunch or something?
No way, man. Those kids love to eat. No way. Joe Figueroa, Brock Vaughn, some of the biggest eaters I've ever seen. So, and, it's actually funny. So my official visit at Hopkins, we at the end of the night, we went to this sandwich place, and I got a big foot-long sandwich. Brock Vaughn was actually there with me. He's an offensive lineman for Hopkins, and I ate half my sandwich, and I saw him eyeballing my second half, and I go, "Hey, Brock, like, you want this, man?" And I gave it to him, and he ate it in about 30 seconds. And right then, that was the start of a great friendship. So it was my freshman year roommate, and we've been boys ever since. So, yeah, no, I cannot hang in there with those guys.
Nor should you at all. Yeah. I remember you looked very fit when I was standing next to you. You're much taller than me as well. But let's talk about spring and beyond at this point. You kind of recapped the changes in light of Coach Margraf's passing, and we've got another season coming up here. Coach Camara probably isn't going to change much from the equation. He's been there for a number of years in different capacities, obviously, at Hopkins. So what's spring practice been looking like for your team? And, how raring to go are you guys to kind of get back on the field? Is this going to be a dedication season for Coach Margraf? What's kind of the approach, the mentality right now as Hopkins football tries to repeat or even go beyond last year?
Yeah. No, we're so ready for the first game playing Randolph-Macon. Everyone's just so ready to get out there. Like you said, we had such an amazing year last year, but just coming so close and putting up such a good fight in the semifinals, it really left us wanting more. And, I think we're trying to do everything we can this offseason to get back to where we were in a chance to go to the finals and play in the championship. So in terms of practice, the structure's been the same, so we're kind of keeping that same structure. We had such a good year. We're trying not to change too much, because we want to get back exactly where we were. So structure's been very similar. Like you said, the offense is very similar to last year. We had such an amazing year that I don't think we're going to change much. And then defensively, I don't really get to see too much of the practice because we're always on the offensive side. But it looks like in terms of scheme, it's a little different this year, which is fun to play against. Like I said earlier, it's fun to play against in practice because I've kind of been going against the same type of defense for the past 3 years. It's cool to kind of get a fresh fresh taste, and I'm learning a lot. Just going out there every rep against a new coordinator, new defense, new guys. So, it's been fun. But yeah, I mean, we can't wait for week 1 against Randolph-Macon. So it can't come soon enough.
JB, the internet is a powerful thing, and there are rumors all over the internet. And there is one internet rumor I found actually about you, David Tammaro. Yep, and let me see if I'm calling up on my phone here. I think I need to ask you about whether or not your younger brother is a better basketball player than you. Now, you've got some height. We know that. We probably got some ups and can maybe dunk that ball. But is John indeed a better basketball player than you? You
know what? I've never said this to him. Hopefully he doesn't watch this show. But I will admit, I think he's a little better basketball player than I am. In high school, he was a starter. He was second-team all-conference as a senior. I was not second-team all-conference. So, the data's there. He's a little better basketball player than me, I'll admit it. I might be a better scorer. I got a better shot, but all around, he's a much better basketball player than I am.
There you go.
That's an In the Huddle exclusive right here, folks. That John Tammaro is a better basketball player than David Tammaro. Are
Not
you
a better
sure?
quarterback, though. So.
Well, yeah, I think that's pretty obvious right now.
Yeah.
But John, we'll have to get John to the show to actually answer that question sometime.
True, yes.
Maybe we'll work on that. So, Dave, really appreciate you joining us. I appreciate Ernie's help getting you on here. And obviously, not an East Region team, but we're going to be following you throughout this upcoming season when it comes down to it, because Lord knows the committee thought you were an East Region type team because they put you in, lumped you in with the rest of the East.
Maryland's still,
Yeah, I know. We kind of know the committee chair. He's kind of a fan of the show, so we have to rib him every so often.
Yeah, exactly.
But you may not know this, but we do give shout-outs to every player guest on the show. And I think actually maybe I gave you some, if I didn't, I was remiss when we were at Hopkins for D3 football. So it is your turn. David Tammaro, as you prepare for the 2019 football season, your shout-outs to any friends, family, teammates, etc. that might be watching.
Yeah, sure. I'm not going to give a shout-out to my brother because I just said he was a better basketball player, but shout-out to my parents. They're the reason why I'm here. They're everything to me. Shout out to my grandparents. It was actually my grandma's birthday this past week, so happy birthday, Grandma. And I just want to shout out my offensive line. They're the reason, that I am here today too. They're amazing. They're the best. They like to joke that we're a power run football team, but I know we're not. They know we're not. And shout out to all the coaches. And my last shout out is shout out to Coach Margraf. This next season is for you, so can't wait to get back out there and honor you and keep going with the legacy you created at Hopkins football.
The guy that gave us the info on John over the internet was Chris Tammaro. I think one of the guys you just gave a shout out to during that, and I know how much he respected how Coach Margraf treated you. You give up your son to a coach, and it's like a second family scenario. And he has just gone on and on behind the scenes to us about how special the relationship was between you and Coach Margraf, between him and Coach Margraf in terms of that, entrustment that occurs. And he is sorely missed. We will, like with Coach Strass last year, be dedicating a lot of our own season to Coach Margraf. And you guys are in our thoughts, and like I said, we're going to be watching you guys throughout the 2019 season. Good luck to you guys.
Thanks a lot, guys. Thanks for having me on the show. It was a blast.
Sure thing. Hey, to me, Hopkins is a football school, not a lacrosse one. Keep it going, man.
I agree. Thank you.
And yeah, it really was a great guy to talk with. And, as we detailed, I talked to him after the RPI game last year, or last season. I guess it was last year at this point. Yeah. But he was, you're getting a bunch of smart guys when you're at Johns Hopkins. Okay, he's from Chantilly, Virginia, so not too far away from there. He's not like one of their California guys that you'll see often in a Johns Hopkins roster. But he's obviously a smart guy, has a great wherewithal, great interview at all times, and really nice and articulate. I mean, total package in that respect, and we've seen what he can do on the football field. He held his own, no doubt, in that Mount Union game last year.
Yeah, and almost basically played until his leg fell off. He was limping at the very end of the game. He was a little banged up, but Yeah, I mean, Hopkins, once again, I think, one of the preseason favorites that we'll see in the upcoming top 25 polls, which probably will get released sometime over the summer. It seems like they keep happening earlier and earlier. But with the players like him and others that they have coming back, I think it'll be, they'll be ready to go. And they actually, I think, are one of playing in one of the very first games of the 2019 season. We talked about this before, but the schedule's got moved back a week, basically. So the first game is on September 5th. First weekend is really around the 7th. Usually it's been a week ahead, usually the end of August, around Labor Day. But for some reason this year, the way the schedule falls, it's going to be a little bit later. But they're excited to kick off against Randolph-Macon, and I think they should have another good season.
And again, Greg Camara, I think we should pronounce his name correctly this time. Greg Camara, Coach, good to see you. We saw his Fast Money performance on Family Feud recently. Cool. It was actually. Congratulations to the Camara family on that back when. But when he got elevated head coach, Rearing wasn't far behind to leave. I think Rearing was somebody in the discussion, obviously, to be head coach there. And, only one person can be head coach at the end of the day. And after the season like they had, you cannot blame Rearing one bit to go to a place like Maritime. Again, we'll talk to him about the decision and choices along the way at a future date. But
it's not unlike what happened with Hobart in 2014 when they went to the Elite Eight, and then you saw Coach DeWall get his first head coaching opportunity with Endicott. You saw Coach Yoder a couple years before that left and has been running Shenandoah now for 6 or 7 seasons. Hard to believe that's been going on for as long as it has, and others. So it's not uncommon that after all-time great seasons that assistants like Rearing and Company get head coaching opportunities.
Yep. So we'll see what happens there. Next headline we want to talk about, though, is about an oddity going on in the MIAC, the MIAC, I call it the MIAC, but whatever you want to call it. They're attempting to boot St. Thomas possibly from the conference. This is sort of like, if you remember back when the Empire 8 had the state schools in it, and there was a complaint by the private schools that there are a lack of resources comparatively to state schools in terms of the ability to get students, the tuition sizes, they had better access to better athletes was the view, so the competition levels were different. And so you saw the Empire 8 eventually move into a system that was all private schools. Then realignment occurred left, right, and center across the board, and they end up taking Salisbury, which is technically a state school in Maryland, Frostburg, which is a state school in Maryland, and Wesley, which is not a state school, but probably a school more akin to a state school in terms of athletics and the access they have to certain players and whatnot. So actually, Wesley didn't go to the Empire 8, I should say. Eventually, Wesley finally aligned with the NJAC, but there was a question whether Wesley would go to the Empire 8 back when. I should be clear on that. So anyway, long story short, eventually the E8 feels the pinch by making a decision like that. And now who's in the Empire 8 now? Brockport, Cortland. Buffalo State has gone to the Liberty League, but more or less as a deal because of the Liberty League's issues. To try to keep their automatic bid. But you see these Morrisville State as well is in the Empire 8 now. You see kind of the horse trading that's happened along the way here, and they're back to state school. So go back to the MIAC and St. Thomas. They're not a state school, St. Thomas, but the view they have is that, hey, St. Thomas has access beyond what the other schools can have because of size and other issues along the way, and not just in football. And so it's time to kick them out, a la Thomas More without the violations.
I guess.
What's your view on it?
Well, it's either. I mean, I guess you can. If you're a St. Thomas person, you could be like flattered that we're so good. We've been kicking everybody's butts for so long that they don't want us to compete against anymore. Or you could look at it as like, wait a minute, we're one of the founders of this conference. The school is right in the city of Minneapolis, basically. I mean, how do they not stay in the Minneapolis or Minnesota interscholastic athletic conference? Doesn't make a lot of sense. It seems like it's kind of a political sour grapes kind of situation, and it's what's made even more strange is the fact that the Tommies are a great program, but they finished third in the conference last year. They didn't even win it, and they lost to the Johnnies. it's kind of strange, but
what's really strange is we got a question earlier in the week before this news from Scott Radzik, and you see it on the screen, Radman_50 on Twitter, asking about the small school, lower school issues with the upper echelon of the MIAC as an issue. So apparently there have been more rumblings about this than we realized coming into this weekend.
Yep.
And yet there it is. And so we did reach out to Coach Caruso, and there may be an interview cutting right into this right now. If he had actually reached out to say he did have a few minutes on Friday, we did not, unfortunately, because of our schedules. But we couldn't land on something today yet. But if before the weekend is out, we can get a chance to speak with him, we'll add it to this program. If we can't, we'll hope to have him on in a future date. The rumblings are there are not enough votes, most likely, to get them booted right now, but things can change. We'll see what happens. I think the MIAC will be making a mistake, and it's not just a mistake in the competitiveness issue, but what kind of situation are you using here to create an example for later on? This is not something you want to create as a legacy type issue that others can get kicked out at will like that. This is a founding member of the MIAC. This isn't just like some fly-by-night. I don't think you kick them out. But
I mean, I've had issues with some of these Minnesota schools beating other teams like 97-0 or 98-0 or 84-0. I mean, that kind of lopsided thing, and maybe that's something that really ultimately has to be taken up with the NCAA, because if you can only bring your 1s and 2s on the road and you're that much superior, I mean, you'd almost be better off to just be able to bring more players to give more kids a chance to play, and maybe get away from these 90-0 types of games, because those aren't really good for anybody.
No, I agree with you, but also as we saw in the Mary Hardin Baylor game last year up at Albright, thank you. They didn't run up the score and still got into the 90s right in front of my face. I mean, I literally watched this thing develop and said, every time somebody scored in the 90s, I thought it was running up the score. And I actually just watched an instance that it was basically you put the players on the field, you do nothing but run the ball, and they're still scoring and defensively still getting points. I mean,
what are you supposed to do?
Exactly. Yeah. Sometimes it happens. We'll see how Albright fares when they go down to Mary Hardin Baylor this year. Something that affects Division III, and only 3 players we could identify originally were pulled into the AAF. The American Association of Football, Alliance of American Football. I screw that up every time. But the Alliance of American Football is now defunct after 8 weeks. 10-week season was cut short.
Orlando Apollos win the championship.
Yes, there were bets paid out on that fact.
Technically, so hey.
What we were waiting to see is if they went to a second season, we thought that was the best chance to get more Division III players into the AAF, because they went for some more high-profile players in the first go of this, with good reason.
Yeah, their model was basically to pull in players who had either been on an NFL roster or had attended, so for instance, the Apollos had guys from Miami, UCF, Florida State, well-known names because of the college football friendliness of the state of Florida, to help get people in the stands. And it worked pretty well for a while. I mean, I think Orlando averaged around 10, or sometimes they said there were 20,000 people there. I don't know if I believe that number, but still, they drew decent crowds, and they had a solid season, finishing 7-1. I feel bad for these players. Some of the stories you hear, guys getting kicked out of their hotel rooms and being told that their medical insurance was void when it was supposed to last to the end of the year. They had some people had to pay out of pocket for flights home and all this. I think it was honestly just a hostile takeover.
By somebody that wouldn't pay the vendors at the end of the day.
Yeah, there's going to be some lawsuits.
you think? But we wanted to talk to somebody that actually had some connection to the AAF and Division III. Jake Payne joined us, and he was a player from Shenandoah, had later won the Arena Bowl with the Washington Valor, and was a defensive end for the Birmingham Iron. Iron? I always mess that up too. You can see some of my shortcomings throughout this show. But for the Birmingham AAF team, how's that?
Yes.
Do my Elmer Fudd here. And he got to speak with us about kind of the highs and lows of this entire episode. JB, let's bring in our guest. 199 tackles in his college career. And that might tell us why he was eventually found by some professional organizations out there. I'll let you do the rest of the honors.
Yeah, this isn't the first time we've had someone from Shenandoah University on the show. You played for one of our old friends, Coach Scott Yoder down there in Winchester, Virginia. But we'd like to welcome on Jake Payne, Shenandoah grad, a D3 grad, one of the very few who made it into the unfortunately now defunct AAF. Jake, how you doing?
Doing good, guys. How are you guys doing?
Doing well. So, Jake, based on your grad year, you were probably in the very first class that Coach Yoder brought into Shenandoah University. Tell us a little bit about your college career and what you saw, how the Hornets were able to, kind of get themselves, back into the ODAC race.
I came in, Yoder came in my sophomore year. So I played my freshman year there before, and then he came in my sophomore year, and we had interviewed a bunch of coaches and brought him in, and I really liked playing with Coach Yoder. I think he's a really good coach and a really good guy. And then they really, these past 2 years, really since I left, obviously Hayden has been balling. He's a really good football player. He'll hopefully get some NFL shots this year. But he's, he really helped them take these last 2 or 3 years and really move forward.
And you're talking of Hayden Bowserman, I believe, the quarterback over there that was, if my memory serves, a Gagliardi semi-finalist. And finalist, actually, right? Yeah, I only did the show. I should know that. But anyway, he has definitely done well for that team. But let's talk about you, the progression. You didn't, get discussed much after the fact in terms of draft possibilities, unrestricted free agents after the draft and all that stuff. And then you end up eventually in the Washington Valor of the Arena Football League and an Arena Football champion. Tell us a little bit about what you did to get yourself out there so that you could be, let's say, not draft stock, but pro stock out there for what we'll call more minor league professional football and the Arena League at that time.
So coming out, I went with the Jets. I had really thought the Jets would sign me as a undrafted free agent. I had talked with a lot of teams going into the draft, and then I ended up going with the Jets and the Eagles to mini camp, and then ended up not getting signed. So I'd signed with Montreal in the CFL, and then so that was 2016. They had signed me like November. Then I got released the day before minicamp with Montreal. And then an hour later, I'm driving up to sign with Valor. So I had gone to like an open tryout in November 2016 for the Washington Valor. And one of my uncle just like had seen it on TV. He had saw it, I heard it on the radio. So he said, hey, I heard they have an arena for BC, and so I just kind of went in there, did a tryout, the head coach, the D-line coach, now the head coach, just the D-line coach at the time, he really liked me. They offered me, and an hour later, Montreal offered me. So Montreal, and then like I said, when I released by them, I went up with the Valor. It was 2 seasons there, and I had a playing there. A lot of fun, but also the D-line coach was really good. I learned a ton playing with him. And once I used that, when I signed with AA, I got my game from Valor, and that had kind of got me signed with the Alliance. Also, like my agent, I'd signed with a new agent, and the VP of Birmingham was the head of player personnel, or the head of college scouting for the Eagles. He was the one that brought me in with the Eagles. So we had a connection there. So that helped a lot getting to Birmingham. And also the head of player personnel in Birmingham was the head coach of the Cleveland Gladiators in the Arena League in 2007. So he knew me as well because he was trying to play. So we had a couple connections, and everything just kind of lined up real well. And I had the game to back me up.
So, Jake, it sounds like, with your experience as a Division III guy, I mean, a lot of times you're not going to be given necessarily all the same looks. So it's about kind of making the most of your opportunities, making connections with people. You mentioned that some of the connections you made with the Eagles have helped you along the way. But once the AAF started to come around, was that something that your agent was able to help you with? Because the business model that I understood was that they were really targeting sort of ex-Division I guys and or people who played in the NFL in specific markets. Somehow they picked you up in Birmingham, Alabama. What was that whole experience like for you to get into the AAF? And we'll talk about what happened after, but just that whole process, because it was a sort of a year in the making for this new league.
Yeah, so I had heard about the league February of last year was when I first started hearing about it, and that was when I started hearing, contract-wise, what they're going to be paying, along with that it was going to be all former NFL coaches and stuff, and that's really what I cared about, was just kind of using that to get exposure. And, it's not about what you know, it's about who you know. So, if you get in with a bunch of NFL coaches and stuff, and NFL personnel guys, they all have a lot of connections. And I knew that. And so I had my eye on the AAF, and I put in, I think, April, I'd done an online questionnaire, just sent my stuff in. And then I ended up firing my agent and signed with a new agent one of my buddies who was on the Valor, and signed with him, and then he was all about trying to get me into the AAF. And so then it started after my last arena season. Then we really just went full go, sending all my film out and stuff. But we were trying to figure out, for the AAF, was I free agent or was I allocated to a team? So I ended up being allocated to Birmingham because of my CFL, because of Montreal. So
interesting.
It was because I was allocated to the team that already wanted me.
Well, that's an interesting situation, because some of the stuff that happened with the AAF ultimately came down to questions, I think, about who they were going to be able to take, how they would allocate it, if the NFLPA would cooperate or not to a certain degree to help the league continue to exist to a certain degree once the Carolina Panther, or it was the Carolina hockey team's CEO, Hurricanes, thank you, came in with his money. But obviously things took a turn for the worse. When did you kind of learn just how bad things were and what would eventually happen after week 8 of the season?
I mean, we had heard throughout the season, there was reports and stuff coming out, low on money, and then Tom Dundon comes in and buys, majority shareholder, and then he's trying to get NFLPA involvement, doesn't get the involvement, so then, at the time didn't get the involvement that he wanted to them. So then we were all just we just kind of figured it was he said, she said. We also try to not care about that stuff. You try not to worry about it, because if you're focused on that, then you lose focus on football. So we're in the weight room. I was in the weight room, and then suddenly they were like, "Yeah, the league just got suspended." And so that was when, not necessarily panic, but we were all just like, "The heck did this come from?"
What do we do
an
now?
hour later, an hour later we had a team meeting. We were like, "Okay, the coaches will tell us what's going on." We get to the team meeting, and our GM is talking. He's like, "We don't know anything. The coaches didn't know anything. We didn't do anything. We just heard Tom Dundon decided to shut down the operation."
Well, make sure you get closer to your microphone for us, but I'm going to take you to the next step now. You hear things are over. Have you been paid, I guess, is one question, fully for at least the time that you served? the AAF. I'm seeing kind of a shake of a head there.
No, yeah, we got paid. We got paid for the weeks that we played and stuff, all the games. But like, we didn't get paid for the last 2 games of our contract that we didn't play, and then we didn't get obviously we had just secured a playoff spot, so we were just wanting to try and get to that championship game. Really,
yeah,
that's
that
what
was
we were
actually
all
the
about.
impetus. The whole impetus for this interview is I was planning on meeting Jake here in Orlando when they came down and play the Apollos, and we were probably going to try to do this interview in person, but
Yeah,
the way things panned out,
we were
it
gonna
just
we were going to play Orlando 2 games in a row. So we were going to play them last game of the season, and then the first round of the playoffs as well in Orlando.
yeah.
So now, what's next, Jake? I mean, the XFL is starting up. The NFL obviously is ongoing. You've got some good exposure. What's next for you, and what's the pathway for you?
Definitely, working to get back in the NFL. If not this year, then next year. I gotta see with my body, what's going on. I feel pretty good. I gotta figure out a couple different things. I'm probably not going to talk about, but yeah, definitely not this year. Then, if not this year, then definitely next year, or just get ready for the XFL and then work NFL after that.
Yeah, I know they've got a team down here in Tampa Bay, so hopefully we can get you keep you down here in the South. A worst case, I know like Draft Diamonds say. I know I've seen your name mentioned as one of the guys that would be great to bring in to an NFL camp. I know that there have been some AAF players who have been getting signed, so we certainly will keep tabs on you there, and hopefully you'll get your opportunity.
I appreciate it. Yeah, I got a lot of family down in Tampa, so that would be cool. Obviously, DC. If I could play for any team, it would be the DC team.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Jake, one question in general though, as a D3 show, this is one that's very relevant because we have a lot of players and their families that watch. They want to know what they should do. Their players, or the players, or the families of the players want to know how these D3 players that have the skill. You had 200 tackles, just about 1 short of it in your 4-year career at Shenandoah. So obviously your numbers spoke a lot, but you needed to push yourself out there, and so it sounds like you went through a couple agents here to get to this point now. But what is your best advice ultimately for a player in D3 that's got those skills to get to that next level? Go ahead.
We call it FOF. Focus on football. That's kind of what I'm saying. We had over in Birmingham a lot, just focus on football. I've talked with a lot of the guys over at Shenandoah, Hayden, going into the senior year. Only thing I told Hayden was like, dude, that stuff will take care of it. You can't control a lot of that stuff. You need to control the controllables. The only thing you control is how you go out and do this year, what you put on film. Because at the end of the day, the only way a Division III guy will make it to the NFL is through film, through his game film and stuff. So, you can do all this stuff, try and get your name out and do all that stuff, go run 40s. You don't have the game film, they're not going to take one look at you. Like, when I say game film, like, it's not, like, the reason I got signed, or got my NFL looks out of college was my game film was like, and I'm not trying to toot my own horn, my game film was something like it showed that I shouldn't really be at Division III. That, like, because they would watch it, they'd be like, all right, obviously he's dominating. They have 3 guys on the play, but who's he going against? So then that became the knack. It's just, oh well, he's not going against any competition. So then I got to an all-star game against, it was the Gridiron Showcase, and they had I interviewed 22 NFL teams after my first day of practice. So I started killing it against the Division I guys. That was a big thing for me, to get into that game. But really, like I said, the film just, for a Division III guy, you have to be just absolutely dominant. Like, I didn't lose. Sorry, truck. Yeah, I didn't lose a one-on-one pass rush once my senior year. Like you just gotta, you can't ever get blocked. You're a D-line, and you can't ever give up a sack if you're an O-lineman. Like you look at Ali Marpet, he didn't give up a pressure in his junior or senior year, and that's how dominant you get to be. Hayden, led the nation in almost every basketball category his last 2 years. And obviously, the measurables help. I was considered undersized and slow. Too little slow for an outside linebacker, a little too small for a D-line. So, that's all things I've had to deal with. But, I've gotten there now. I've gotten a lot faster. I was 264 coming out of college. I played at 298. I played at 302 2 games ago. The last game was 298.
Wow.
So, stuff. They had weight here.
Well, if you put James and I together, you almost reach one of you. So that's a good. Well, hey, listen.
I think I went into camp at like 278, and they were like, "Yeah, we need you to put on a lot of weight." Like, all right, because I was pretty much playing like D tackle.
James, we want to give you a chance to give some shout-outs, buddy, and give us that one last thing as well when you lead into them. But any shout-outs, any family or friends that might be watching, any teammates, AAF or otherwise, that might be watching. But also give us your one last thought as well. I don't want to cut you off.
No, I was just going to say, obviously your game film is what you need to get to the next level, but you also have to market yourself. Twitter, I used to spend like 8 hours a day. I kid you not, like 8 hours a day on Twitter, just typing in the search bar like draft scout, NFL analyst, anyone that had anything to do with it, and then I would send out my highlights to them. And I ended up getting put in like Twitter jail or something. Like I would get they thought I was spamming, but I would do that every day just so you got to get your name. That was the only way I could get my name. So you're a Division III guy. I didn't know any NFL players. I didn't know any NFL scouts, and ultimately, that's what got me. That's how I got the invite to the All-Star games. A couple teams ended up coming to Shenandoah my senior year, all through guys I would meet on Twitter. They were just like, "Hey, I went to high school with the scout. He's now a scout with the Steelers." And the Steelers came to practice. So just you never know who knows something. But as far as shout outs go, man, I just thank my family, thank God for giving me these opportunities. My family for just always supporting me, and then all the coaches I've had along the way that have really helped me. And like my college coach, my D-line coach at Shenandoah, he always was great about keeping my head straight. He never let me get a big head. He would always, if I ever started getting a little strut in my step, he would, hey, cut that out. Like he was quick to down, so that was good.
Keep you in line.
Well, been a pleasure.
I love the FOF. Yeah, I love the focus on football. Hope you can keep doing that, and we'll be in touch, Jake. Thank you for hanging in there with us with all the technical stuff. Maybe if you do end up in the XFL soon, we'll get you in DC or hopefully maybe down here in Florida. But thanks again for joining us, and we'll keep you posted on when we get this whole show wrapped up here.
I appreciate you guys having me. Sorry, next time we do something, I'll make sure I get better Wi-Fi in a quiet environment.
It went well. Don't you worry. This was great. And,
it's all good, man.
You know what? But next time in person, we'll do it. Be well.
That's right.
Okay. Sounds good, man. I appreciate everything.
Thanks again to Jake for his time on that, and the AAF will be a memory, no doubt, like the XFL was after its time.
Let's talk about the XFL. I know
it's a little dusty over here, but yeah,
dusty.
The original.
Yeah, that's a almost 20-year-old football right there.
Well, I'm a 42-year-old guy, so I don't know what you're looking for around here. There's a lot of old crap on this show.
Tell me about it. Ooh.
So, yeah, you're okay. But the XFL coming back next year, probably with a different looking football, I would hope. Probably. But we'll see what happens if guys like Jake get an opportunity over there. Vince McMahon, if you're watching, sign up that man.
Yes.
Let's go to Twitter questions. You reached out to folks by 94 to 6% margin. People wanted us to do this show, so thanks for that, folks.
Yeah.
But some questions came along. And here's one that we got some interesting news from. And the question is, I think from, I can't remember the name, you'll see on the screen here in a second. Brockport QB switch was the topic they want us to talk about. Okay, since last time, literally 3 days after I saw you, we got information that there were some rumblings at Brockport with Joe Germinerio. So we didn't really get to report on this. But Joe Germinerio, after we saw the poster from Brockport excluding him in the roster that they put out, we had heard the rumblings and put two and two together, and it's no secret anymore. Joe Germinerio is not returning for his final year of eligibility at Brockport, which would have been his graduate school year because of his time at Albany, etc. Now, whether or not they can announce him leaving next school because of the original transfer, I don't know. I don't know if releases were required or how this exactly works. But we're hearing rumors, unconfirmed, but from multiple sources, that Joe Germinerio has determined that he will be a player at Ithaca next year in the Liberty League. We may be wrong, but when you hear enough people talk about this, I think it's public enough at this point to say Joe might be there. No matter what, the quarterback whose job it is to lose now at Brockport is Jason Helwig, who is a D2 transfer from Pace University, but he did not play. He redshirted his first year at Pace, came over to Brockport. He is a well-liked individual in the locker room.
We got to see him play against Hobart.
Exactly.
A pretty decent amount, and he's a good quarterback.
And just if you get a chance, Brockport did a web series with him where he was taking on other sports, women's and men's sports, and other things.
He's a jack of all trades.
I think he wore a tutu or something at one point.
It was pretty funny.
Worth going to watch just for that right there. Helwig, good luck in suppressing those videos eventually. But they do have transfer coming in from what I understand. We don't want to name names, although I think Erie Community College is starting quarterback. Jack Edwards, we saw that on Twitter, etc. Something about him going to Brockport. So if that's true, he's going to be somebody to reckon with there. Some freshmen possibly coming in as well. Let's put it this way. Joe Germinerio is a great player.
Great guy.
A great guy. Got to know him well over the 2 years that we've done the video portion of the show and expanded it to the East region. However, the Brockport program continues. Its strength was as much defensive as it was offensive last year. The minus 4 rush yardage per game. And they do graduate off some of those guys, no doubt. The Rashad Bakers and company over there. Caleb Fidelis as an offensive lineman graduates off. Things are going to have to change, but Brockport has been retooling pretty well over the last couple of years, and you can see it from their upward, win-loss escalation, the wins especially on that. So, Helwig isn't Germinerio. I get it, but he may add something different to the game for Brockport, and we'll see how it plays out. Whether Joe Germinerio would be a quarterback or a defensive player, because remember at Albany he was a defensive back. What he plays exactly at Ithaca, I don't know. We've had off-the-record discussions with Wahid Nabi. He's coming back, I'll say that much. So it's not like he's going anywhere from Ithaca, and he's just enjoying the coleslaw in the off-season right now. But, beyond that, we don't know exactly how this works, but there's your answer to the question. We appreciate you sending it out to us. One thing we found interesting, we did do a little research and heard some things that originally RPI was supposed to play Brockport this year. And before the playoff game last year, RPI decided against it, picked up a couple different teams, Anna Maria being one of them along the way here. And now Brockport's going to be playing Framingham Framingham State for 2 years, it sounds like. And I think they have Alfred State currently on their schedule. But, it'll be interesting to see if Brockport doesn't add a different team to their schedule eventually. We're not sure how solid that Alfred State game is, for instance. So stay tuned. If we see any changes, we'll let you know. But Brockport lives on here.
Yes, indeed.
Wolverines fandom.
I wonder what school he likes.
Wesley!
That's right.
He's asking for predictions, and here are some of them he's asking for. I'm going to go right to you with these. The first two are kind of the same to me. D3 dark horse or a surprise team to upset the apple cart. What are you thinking here, my friend?
Dark horse. Well,
I think he means nationally, but maybe just the East region too.
Well, I mean, nationally, I guess, I don't know if you can call St. John's a dark horse, but, if there's anyone who's going to possibly get into the national championship game over a Mount Union or Mary Hardin Baylor, they sure came close last season, and they could potentially do it this year, possibly. St. Thomas, even with the challenges that they've had, should be in that discussion. I think East region-wise, though, there is a player from Florida who actually decommitted from Mount Union and is going to Dean College in the ECFC, which is now officially, I think, considered a D3 school. It was in sort of like the probationary 2-year period where they, their wins and losses didn't technically count towards the regional stuff. But if and this is a fairly decorated quarterback, so if he is as good as the hype and Dean is slowly improving, that could be a team. We see a ton of Twitter activity around Anna Maria and Coach Mulrooney. They seem to be bringing in a huge class, so they could potentially upset the apple cart in with some of the games that they have against either RPI or other New England teams. Otherwise,
I'm going to go for one if you don't mind.
Sure.
It's hard to really call this team a dark horse, but I think it's fitting that the person that asked this question is a Wesley fan. I think Wesley, honestly. I know that's sort of not the right wording for a team like Wesley, but let's look at what happened last year. Now Frostburg is out of the equation. Mm-hmm. I just see a team in Wesley that I think, with all the drama out of the way to a certain degree, obviously you don't ever recover from a loss of a guy like Coach Drass at that time. Mike Drass is Wesley football, no doubt. Mm-hmm. But the proximity to the events, I think, it could have gone two ways for them, I think, last year. Really, really positive on the football field for the emotion of it, or possibly taking their eye off the prize. I think it may have been the latter of the two. Now that we're further away from it, I think with what they've got returning, they've got some real talent on that field. I think teams like Del Val will not be the same team. I think the MIAC is going to have another quasi-off year. Mm-hmm. I think it allows a team like Wesley, as long as they can find ways to beat the teams like Montclair in the world, more on that in a moment. Mm-hmm. But I think Wesley has a real chance to bite some teams in the backside. I think they relish the role of being an underdog
for a change.
Yep.
Yeah, that's interesting. And yet, to your point, I think Montclair State, having finished 8-2, Jaquil Birch coming back for his junior season. I don't know how much they lost to graduation, but it feels like there's enough coming back where they should be looked seriously as a.
Oh, hold on now. Coach Palazzo is asking about Montclair and NJAC predictions.
All right,
let's show it right now first. And now, okay, go ahead. Talk to us about it.
I mean, obviously Wesley is always a team to contend, but why can't Montclair be the NJAC favorite? I mean, they lost a couple of close ones. I mean, obviously Salisbury had a great season. They kind of fell off there at the very end of the season, unfortunately. But it should be a very competitive race. But who's to say that Montclair can't run the table? They came real close to doing it last year, and they had a young team, and all those guys should be coming back.
One last question here, and I agree with you wholeheartedly. I've gone to the last couple big games Montclair's hosted. Remember Wesley a couple years ago and Frostburg last year. Yep. I wouldn't be surprised if I end up back there one more time this year to cover a game. We'll see what happens. Yep. So last question, Wolverines fandom again. Small schools with good pro day performers. We've heard about some actually, and we still got some more time to go before the draft and free agent signings and all that stuff. But I will point out we've heard Jared Ruth had some good performance. I know
Mountain Union, wide receiver. Yeah.
I know Luke Porman and him are still friends.
Yeah,
close.
He actually threw. He was the quarterback he brought to Indianapolis, and he was the QB who threw him all the passes during his pro day. And from what I saw on Instagram and elsewhere, looks like Jared really tore it up.
And so that put him on the radar at the very least. Markeith Miller, we've been hearing some rumblings about from Mary Hardin Baylor, and that's deserved, I think. Yeah. It's rare you see a running back with his size be as agile and fast as he is, and runs over people as well. That never hurts, okay? Yeah, right. But a true gentleman off the field, but a true...
And I think his little brother is going to go play for the Crusaders, too.
That is correct.
One more Miller.
He goes
more Miller time.
Well, Markeith goes beast mode like no other in that field.
Yes,
and
if his little brother's anything like his older one, then boy.
Well, Mary Hardin Baylor's got a lot to replace there in Markeith Miller. Also, let's see, who else have we heard about here?
Nick Giorgio, Springfield.
Yep.
I think he's going to have some opportunities, some looks. And
TJ Josie technically is still in the running as well from Crusaders. So those four are kind of the central names we've heard so far. There are going to be more names, and as we get closer to the draft.
There was a tackle for Whitewater, I believe, who had an opportunity in the Senior Bowl or something like that. I asked Ali Marpet's agent about him. I think he's probably more of a undrafted free agent type of person.
Honestly,
drafty, but that's kind of how it goes for most Division III guys.
Yeah, I will say this. I think we're going to see this number of D3 players drafted. Okay, this year there's just nothing that's jumping out like an Ali Marpet back when even Ali Marpet was a surprise go second round. But to go anywhere in the first 7 rounds or the 7 rounds of the draft takes a lot. And when you're a D3 player, the prevailing thought is, why am I going to waste a draft pick on it when I can go get them as an undrafted free agent?
Yep.
So we'll see what happens. So draft days aren't going to be the happy days for D3. It's going to be what happens on the final draft day after the final draft pick is made and people can actually sign at that point in time.
Right. And
we'll keep you updated as that happens. That's the end of our notes, but one thing we were going to do to close this show out was to talk about some shout-outs and thoughts generally. You have a shout-out to one player.
Yeah. So we mentioned Del Val earlier. Nicholas DeGotti, the Ultimate Warrior, is going to be participating in the Spring League down in Texas. So there is some spring football still going on, and I know Nick has been doing the path which we've talked to other players like Joe Callahan about. You just got to keep grinding at it, and I think he had his opportunities in an arena team for a little bit, and now he's in the spring league and competing against Division I caliber types of guys. So we wish him well, and hopefully he will end up on an NFL team after all this is said and done.
My shout-outs go to Wahid Nabi. We talked about him earlier. He and I have talked about connecting this summer and doing a little coleslaw taste test finally.
That sounds like a good episode.
I think it's going to be worthy of an interview, at least for the preseason show we do eventually. Yep. But Nabi, obviously a quarterback with talent. We'll see what happens with this whole Germinerio situation in Ithaca, but he's somebody that should still have a role no matter what at Ithaca. And the charisma he has, we really enjoy talking to him, working with him along the way, so we'll see what happens there. Anybody else we want to give shout-outs to? Your wife, Jen, who's put up with us during your visit here in New York, talking football all the time.
Yeah, no, we're looking forward to. I've never actually been to Columbia's campus, so I'm looking forward to checking that out.
Get it back on.
Yeah, so they're probably, they better watch out if there's an open bar. That's all I got to say. But, it should be a fun night. We got to reconnect with some of her classmates from her master's program, and it's just great to be here in New York, and thank you for your hospitality. I don't know about that helmet in the background. It's kind of maybe a poor decorating choice, but we'll keep it up. So we got Dino's name on there, so we'll.
I don't know what your problem is with Union football exactly, but it is what it is.
It is what it is.
And this show is what it was. Thanks for joining us, folks, here on In the Huddle, special April 2019 update. Season 11 still alive here, but Season 12 coming soon to a Facebook Live near you.